It's no secret that the Battlefield community has been extremely vocal about what is going on with the class system announcement that just recently happened regarding Battlefield 6. There is a ton of drama going on with it. I've made a ton of videos on this subject, and I've been really torn with what I would like to see with the game, because for me personally, I will end up playing any sort of class system they decide to implement. In previous videos, I stated that DICE should listen to the community because I was personally afraid of the community freaking out about something like this and that having a negative impact on the overall perception of Battlefield 6 before it even releases. But I just can't shake how I really feel about some of the community's reaction regarding the class system in Battlefield 6. I think the Battlefield community is being far too dismissive. I think they're being far too resistant to change that may actually be good for Battlefield in the long run. I think they're completely overreacting. I think they are reacting more because of emotion rather than logic. And I think a lot of the Battlefield community is not seeing the larger picture of what DICE is trying to accomplish with their plan for the class system in Battlefield 6. I'm fully aware that the Battlefield community has been extremely loud on their demand for DICE to class lock weapons, but just because they're being loud about it, it doesn't automatically make the community right. It doesn't mean that the community really understands the larger picture, as I stated previously, and just because the community is being really loud on some things, it doesn't necessarily mean that DICE actually has to listen to them and shift their entire direction. In fact, in my opinion, when it comes to the class system specifically for Battlefield 6, I think DICE taking a hardline approach against the community's wishes may actually be better in the long run. And I understand that is going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. However, this is not one of those videos where you can watch the first 2 minutes and get a full understanding of the conversation at hand. I'm going to do my absolute best to dive into each and every single tiny little detail regarding the class system, people wanting locked weapons versus open weapon system, and so much more. I will start this off by just giving people a general recap of what has happened so far. Battlefield, a few weeks ago, maybe about a month ago at this time, released their first class system post, and this detailed that DICE is going to be going ahead with an open weapon class system for Battlefield 6. This, of course, triggered outrage, and the community is begging DICE to lock weapons to classes because a lot of the community basically, quote-unquote, feels that it's more Battlefield that way. The community wants the weapons themselves to play a class-defining role within the class system. Fast forward to just a couple days ago, DICE releases another post, and DICE doubles down with their open weapon system direction, and DICE is going ahead with an open weapon system and defining classes and their respective roles via other methods that are not weapons. For instance, signature weapons, signature traits, signature gadgets, the class gadgets themselves, throwables, weapon packages, and individual training paths you can select between for the different classes of Battlefield 6. I will be going in depth on every single thing I just mentioned, so again, I will try to leave timestamps if you are particularly interested in a particular part of the video, but I really urge maybe listen to the entire thing this time around. The first thing I will mention is gadgets have always played a more class-defining role than weapons ever have in the history of Battlefield. Whenever people talk about the class system, I see a lot of people talk about the BF4 system and how weapons were locked in that game, but in reality there were a lot of universal weapon categories, and if you looked at a recon player, that recon player could have anything from a shotgun to a sniper rifle. So you really could never predict what weapons people had in one of the best Battlefield games of all time. However, if you saw that same recon player, you knew for a fact they could have a spawn beacon. You knew for a fact they could have a tugs, or even a SOFLAM. The same thing goes for engineer players. If you're playing in a vehicle such as a tank, you knew in Battlefield 4 to kill the engineers first because they might have a rocket launcher or a javelin. And this same thing applies to every single Battlefield game that I have personally ever played Even Battlefield 2042 with its open weapon system. Whenever I see an assault player, I know they might have armor plates. I also know they might have C4. So the gadgets in Battlefield have always played a class-defining role. The purpose of the class is very largely based off of what gadgets are available to that said class. Taking a look back at, for instance, Battlefield 1 had a lot of weapons that were restricted to specific classes. SMGs, Assault, light machine guns, Support, sniper rifles, Recon, and finally, self-loading rifles for Medic. But also, the gadgets were very clearly defined per class as well. The problem with restricting weapons on a per-class basis, in my opinion, is a lot of the times one of these classes just really doesn't interest a lot of people, and it can actually hurt the potential team play element of playing Battlefield, which a lot of people love so much. Speaking from personal experience, I was reluctant to switch to the Assault class in Battlefield 1 because I simply didn't enjoy what weapons were available to the class nearly as much as weapons that were available to the other classes. The open weapon system fixes this because it allows you to play the role of a certain class that fits a certain situation with your favorite weapon. So in my opinion, this open weapon system actually heavily incentivizes people to engage in that team play element. If there's a tank and you don't like playing engineer and you don't like the engineer's weapons, guess what? The open weapon system says you can play engineer, you can kill that tank, and you can have your favorite weapon. But then, of course, one of the common points that I see come up so much in the Battlefield community is if we have an open weapon system, people are simply just going to use the best weapon on the best class, and that's it. But that point simply doesn't make any sense to me, because wasn't the meta in Battlefield 3 a game with class-locked weapons to use the M16A3 on the Medic class or the Assault class? I forgot which one it was called. Wasn't the meta in Battlefield 4 to play the Medic class with the AEK-971 or ACE? Wasn't the meta in Battlefield 1 really to either play the Recon class or the Medic class with SLRs? And I could go on, but my point is, you can never really force people to play how you want them to play, and there is no point in trying to do it. People are always going to find their best, most preferred thing to play, and they're never going to switch off of it if they don't feel like it, unless you have an open weapon system, which allows for a bit more freedom while allowing people to play different classes with their preferred weapon of choice. One thing that is extremely important to point out about the Battlefield 6 class system is, let's say you want to play Recon with an assault rifle. You are going to be at a disadvantage using that assault rifle because using an assault rifle on the Recon class is not incentivized. This is where the class-defining element of Battlefield 6's class design comes in, and they are called signature weapons. The reason why you're not incentivized to use an assault rifle on the Recon class is because the Recon class heavily incentivizes you to use the sniper rifle weapon category. This provides you with a ton of different benefits that includes faster shot rechambering with bolt-action rifles, reduced scope sway, and improved aim stabilization when you are holding your breath. On top of that, if we take a look at a customizable aspect of the Battlefield 6 class system, which is called Trainings, you can select between two separate trees within each class in Battlefield 6, and as you can see, on the left we see the Sniper tree. If you decide to use any other weapon other than a bolt action, you will not be gaining some of these benefits we see on the tree on the left. For instance, if you decide to use a bolt action, you gain the benefits that I mentioned previously on top of being able to highlight enemies if you body shot them, and you can prevent enemies from healing, and then your level 2 perk, if you headshot people, they are unrevivable. You do not get any of these benefits for using any other weapon on this class, and the same goes for every other class in Battlefield 6. For instance, if we take a look at what the Assault's signature weapon is, the Assault class's signature weapon is the Assault Rifle. They are heavily incentivized to use Assault Rifles. If you decide to use something else, you are not gaining these benefits. So I think what will ultimately happen is, you will see people using the correct weapons on the correct class way more than I think people are making it out to be. So just to recap, we have class gadgets that you can select between in Battlefield 6. That's the same as every other Battlefield ever made. We have heavy incentives to use a specific weapon type per class, and some of these incentives bleed into the class-specific training paths you can select, on top of class-specific signature gadgets. So make no mistake, Battlefield 6 has possibly more class definition than we have seen in a very, very long time. Having an open weapon system doesn't necessarily mean there is no class identity anymore. Quite the contrary. As I stated previously, there are heavy incentives to use specific weapons on specific classes. It most certainly does not mean that most people will be playing one class with one weapon. I, for one, definitely think people will be switching a lot between classes in this game to gain the different benefits each class offers on top of the different gadgets. So before I go into the next section of this video, which has to do specifically with some of the changes they announced in the second post, I just want to cap this section off. I think the Battlefield community are just being the same old Battlefield community, extremely stuck in their ways, extremely resistant to change, extremely dismissive without actually taking a good solid look and considering whether or not this is good, or whether or not this is bad, or whether or not this actually matters at all. And keep in mind, a lot of people have not even played Battlefield 6 to experience this for themselves, and yet they are immediately dismissing this class system as the end of the world. And then they go ahead and cite their experience with Battlefield 2042's open weapon system and saying, it's going to play just like Battlefield 2042. Absolutely false. The Battlefield 6 open weapon system appears to be far more advanced and far better implemented than the one they haphazardly threw together in Battlefield 2042. The benefits are a lot better. The benefits just seem way more class defining, way more purpose giving, way more role defining. And please keep in mind, Battlefield 6 does not have the specialist system. You do not have to worry about getting airbursted by Zane or a McKay grapple hook or getting permanently spotted across the map by a Casper drone. These things are not in Battlefield 6. The next thing I'm going to focus on has to do with a change they made in the Class System Part 2 post, which I will link in the description. This has to do with the Assault class specifically, and I think this is one of the worst and most short-sighted changes we have seen so far, and unfortunately I think this does represent some of the feedback that is happening inside of Battlefield Labs and the sheer incompetency of it. This has to do with Assault's Adrenaline Injector, which is the Assault class's signature gadget, and they say, quote, "We're equipping the Assault class with an Adrenaline Injector that grants resistance to flash and stun effects, enhances sprint speed, reduces explosive damage, and amplifies enemy footsteps for a brief period." DICE then goes on to state that apparently the players inside of Battlefield Labs have emphasized a, quote, Assault lone wolf mentality, and there is a desire to make the Assault class less self-reliant and instead enhance, quote, team play capabilities. So what they did is they removed the Adrenaline Injector's ability to heal the Assault class. On a surface level, this sounds fine, but at a deeper level, this is completely incompetent game design. I need to emphasize this as clearly and as loudly as I possibly can. Currently, as it stands, within Battlefield Labs, the Assault class is the only class in the game that relies on another class in order to actually perform its role as a class. Every single other class is self-sufficient at performing its role. Engineer can kill vehicles and repair vehicles. Support can revive and self-sustain and heal people and resupply. Recon can perform reconnaissance by spotting and spawning teammates. But even though, according to DICE, the Assault class is supposed to be the tip of the spear, the Assault players have to rely on the support players to perform their role effectively. The Assault class's role is, very obviously, to be that frontline soldier, getting kills, creating space, being that fragger role. As a result of the Assault class being the most aggressive class in the game, you are going to take a lot of chip damage in fights. And this is where Battlefield players come in and say, Battlefield is a team play oriented game, Enders. I don't know what you expect. Once again, allow me to emphasize, the Assault class is the only class in this current version of Battlefield 6 that is fully reliant on other classes to perform its intended role. As I'm sure a lot of you are aware, teammate quality and teammate cooperation is a factor completely outside of your control when you are playing Battlefield games. And as far as I can tell from Battlefield Labs leaks, the time to kill in Battlefield 6 is extremely quick, which means, of course, again, the Assault players are going to take a ton of chip damage in fights. In my opinion, there is absolutely nothing wrong with the Assault class having a very limited amount of self-sustain. I think it is extremely easy to balance the med pen. All you really need to do is to consider the following factors, okay? You need to consider the heal rate of the med pen, whether or not it has a cooldown, or whether or not it can be resupplied. That is a choice they have to make. And then, of course, how many med pens can you actually carry? The Assault class having to fully rely on incompetent teammates to perform its role is completely ridiculous, and essentially guts the Assault class from its intended purpose and role within Battlefield 6. In fact, with the way things are right now, funnily enough, the Engineer class and the Support class better fill the role of the Assault class. The Support class, being the medic class in the game, has access to unlimited health, unlimited ammo, the LMG specialization, and overall just way better self-sufficiency. And then taking a look at the Engineer class in its current state versus the Assault class's current state, you'll find that the Engineer class is, again, better suited for Assault's role than Assault is. Assault, in comparison, appears to have much worse gadget selection. Apparently, in some of these leaks, Assault only has access to a bunch of different grenade launchers. Meanwhile, Engineer has way more of a wide variety of gadget selections that are also way more effective. For instance, rocket launchers, mines. And according to this leak, they even have motion sensors. Combine this with the fact that the Engineer class also has a weapon proficiency for submachine guns, which presumably have better time to kill than assault rifles in CQC, well, you get the Engineer class is better than the Assault class in CQC, which is where the Assault class is supposedly supposed to shine, but actually falls short in comparison to two classes in the game. And just to add insult to injury, the Assault class has to utilize its class gadget in order to get explosive resistance. Meanwhile, the Engineer has passive explosive resistance. In order to get the Assault class back to its functional, purpose-built role, they absolutely need to restore the fact that the med pen provides a limited amount of self-sustain. Nobody is arguing for the Assault class to have more self-sustain than Support. I am simply asking for DICE to not completely gut the Assault class because Battlefield players don't understand what they're talking about. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, of course Assault has to rely on other classes to perform its duties. You know, Battlefield is a team play-oriented shooter. That is a load of bullshit, and I'm going to tell you why. Number one, most Battlefield players play the game solo. That is a fact. The vast majority of people do not have a massive friend group that can all play Battlefield at the same time every single time they want to jump on the game. The notion that a bunch of random players, randomly loaded into a server, are some sort of well-oiled team or squad that all know what to do in regards to team play and their roles is absolutely 100% false, and every single person that played Battlefield should agree with that point. As highlighted by Battlefield 5 attrition, you can never force people to participate in team play. I cannot tell you the amount of times attrition killed me because I had to rely on my useless teammates to heal and resupply me, and then they didn't heal or resupply me, and I also couldn't make it over to a resupply crate, and I just die. If the Assault class has to rely fully on the Support class to complete its intended role, guess what? A lot of Assault players are simply not going to play Assault anymore because it is not effective. They are just going to switch to Engineer, and they're just going to switch to Support because it better fills the Assault role. So the gist of what I have to say in this video is if you are against the open weapon system, I really urge you to try to understand what they are trying to do. DICE is trying to define classes in a clear manner via other methods than class-locking weapons. They are defining the classes with a multitude of different things that are all more impactful than previous versions found in Battlefield 2042, and it includes new things that were not found in Battlefield 2042 to help define classes. I will also remind you that one of the greatest consensus Battlefield games of all time in Battlefield 4 barely defined classes with weapons. There were a ton of universal weapon categories. Overall, I think DICE's direction with Battlefield 6's class system may actually be a massive positive in the overall Battlefield game design. I think it will actually incentivize some people to switch classes more, because some people may feel they have more freedom to use what they want, and therefore they can adapt different playstyles because of that. So I just hope that I got the point across very clearly in this video. I am not trying to shill EA or shill DICE. I really do think what they're trying to do with the Battlefield 6 class system may be an overall positive to the Battlefield franchise as a whole. I do think the larger Battlefield community is a little bit stuck in their ways, very resistant to change, very resistant to trying new things, and I don't necessarily think that is a good thing. And let's be totally honest with ourselves, it's not like they're making gadgets universal. If they were making gadgets universal, I would 100% totally understand the community outrage. But in fact, they are doing the exact opposite by keeping gadgets locked to specific classes on top of other really class-defining things. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoy the content, if you want to follow Battlefield 6, subscribe to the channel, be sure to hit the like button. And guys, the entire point of this video really is I wanted to open up this conversation even more because I really don't think there was a conversation before. I don't think the Battlefield community even wants to have a conversation, and that is part of the problem. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.